The afternoon sun was soft that day, the kind that warms the skin without making it uncomfortable. He had finished work earlier than usual and decided to take the long way home, the one that passed through the park he often avoided because it was usually crowded. But something inside him told him to go there. Maybe it was the need for a little peace, maybe just a desire to see something different from his usual routine. As he walked through the entrance, the usual sounds filled the air: children laughing, people chatting, birds picking at crumbs on the ground. Nothing unusual. But then, somewhere in the middle of all that noise, he heard something that made him stop. A sound so gentle, yet so full of emotion, it seemed to rise above everything else. A violin. He couldn't see where it was coming from at first. The melody drifted softly between the trees, almost like it was calling him. He followed the sound, weaving between benches and walking past food stalls. The closer he got, the more the world around him started to quiet down. Even the breeze felt different, like it moved to the rhythm of the music. Finally, near the old stone fountain at the center of the park, he found her. She stood a few steps away from the water, her violin resting on her shoulder, her eyes gently closed as she played. Her clothes were simple, not the kind one would expect from someone playing such emotional music. Her violin wasn't shiny or new either. It had scratches and faded color, like it had been through many years of use. But the sound coming from it was beautiful, deep, full of feeling. He didn't move for a while. He didn't even blink. He just stood there listening, letting the notes sink into him like warmth on a winter morning. People walked past without paying much attention, but for him, everything else faded away. He wondered who she was. What made her play like that? Why did her music sound like she was telling a story only she understood? When the melody slowly came to an end, she opened her eyes with a soft breath, almost like waking up from a dream. She looked around, probably expecting no one to have noticed. When her gaze accidentally met his, she seemed surprised. Not scared or uncomfortable, just surprised. He felt like he should say something, but words refused to come out. She quickly looked away and started adjusting her violin, maybe preparing another piece. He didn't want to disturb her, so he stepped back a little and sat on a nearby bench. He told himself he'd only listen for a few more minutes and then leave. But when she started playing again, he forgot everything he had promised himself. This time, the music felt even softer, as if she were sharing a secret with the air. Families walked by, kids ran around the fountain, joggers passed with their headphones on, but none of them seemed to hear what he was hearing. He noticed small details as she played. The way her fingers moved quickly and smoothly over the strings. The way she gently swayed with the rhythm. The little crease that formed between her eyebrows when she reached a high note. She wasn't just practicing. She was living inside the song. 15 minutes passed, then 20. He didn't realize how long he had been sitting there until the sky began turning golden, hinting that evening was approaching. She finally lowered her violin, taking a deep breath like the music had drained her energy. She wiped her forehead with a small cloth taken from her bag, then sat on the edge of the fountain, gently checking the tuning pegs. He knew he should leave. She didn't know him, and he didn't want her to think he was watching her in a strange way. But something about her presence felt calming, like she belonged to that place, and he didn't want to leave that feeling behind just yet. Without realizing it, he stood up and walked a few steps toward her. But when he got close enough to speak, his voice got trapped in his throat. He just cleared his throat softly. She looked up. He felt his heart jump slightly. He hadn't planned anything to say. "Your music is really beautiful," he finally said, his voice quieter than he expected. She blinked, surprised again, then smiled a little. Just a tiny, shy curve of her lips. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. He nodded awkwardly. "Do you play here often?" She shook her head. "Not really. Only when I feel like the day needs a little music." He chuckled softly, feeling the tension loosen a bit. "Well, I'm glad you played today." She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her violin, brushing her fingers over the strings. "I'm still learning," she said quietly. "I come here to practice because no one really listens." People walk by, and I can play without worrying too much." He smiled. I listened. She looked up again, this time with a small spark in her eyes. "Yeah, I noticed." There was a gentle pause, the kind that isn't awkward but gives space for something simple and real. He sat on the fountain's edge across from her. "Have you been playing long?" She nodded. "Since I was a kid. But life got busy, so I stopped for a while. Now I'm trying again." He admired the honesty in her voice, the softness in the way she described things. She didn't sound like someone trying to impress anyone. She sounded like someone who played because she felt something when she did. As they talked, the sky turned deeper shades of orange and pink. The park grew quieter. A few lamps flickered on, casting warm yellow circles of light across the paths. He found himself asking questions without forcing anything. How she learned, what she loved about music, what made her keep going. She gave short but sincere answers. She asked him a few things too. Where he worked. Why he came to the park today. What drew him to her music. He told her the truth. "I don't know. It just made me stop. I haven't felt that in a long time." She didn't blush or look away out of discomfort. Instead, she nodded slowly, like she understood exactly what he meant. Time passed without either of them noticing. The fountain's water kept flowing, the night settled in, and a few fireflies flickered near the bushes. Eventually, she stood up, placing her violin carefully inside its old case. "I should go," she said softly. He nodded, not wanting to seem disappointed even though he felt it. "Will you be here tomorrow?" She paused. "Maybe, if the day feels right." He smiled. "Then I hope tomorrow feels right." She gave another tiny smile, one that stayed with him long after she walked away. As he watched her disappear down the path, violin case in hand, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A quiet excitement, like life had just shown him a small opening to something new, something he didn't expect. He didn't know her story yet. He didn't know what her dreams were or what her struggles looked like. He didn't even know if she would come back the next day. But he knew one thing for sure. That moment, that music, that unexpected meeting, it had changed something inside him, and he didn't want to let it go. The next day, he returned to the park, hoping to hear the music again. The sky was pale blue, the sun shining softly through thin clouds, and the air carried a slight chill that made him wish he had brought a light jacket. He arrived early, finding the fountain almost empty except for a few early walkers and joggers. He scanned the paths, looking for her familiar figure. For a moment, he wondered if he had imagined everything the day before, if the music and the moment had only existed in his mind. Then he spotted her near a tree, violin in hand, tuning it carefully. She hadn't noticed him yet, and the sight made him feel like he had stumbled into a private world he wasn't supposed to see. He walked closer, trying to stay quiet, but when she heard his steps, she looked up. Recognition passed through her eyes, a small smile forming on her lips. It wasn't a wide smile, not yet, but it was enough to make him feel like the world had shifted slightly in the right direction. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," she replied. Her voice was steady but carried a hint of amusement, as if she was pleased to see him but didn't want to show too much. He sat on the fountain edge, watching her for a moment before speaking again. "Your music yesterday, it was amazing." She tilted her head slightly, almost shyly. "Thank you. I wasn't sure anyone was listening." "I was. Every note." She looked away, brushing her hair behind her ear. The wind carried the soft smell of fresh grass and flowers from the park. There was a silence between them, but it wasn't awkward. It felt natural, like two people who had somehow found a common space where words weren't always necessary. She began to play, this time a different tune. It was lively, yet it had the same depth, the same ability to hold the listener in a quiet spell. He listened, feeling the music wrap around him, almost like a gentle embrace. Every so often, he noticed the small details. The way her fingers moved with precision, the slight bend of her wrist, the soft inhale she took before a high note. It was clear she had spent years practicing, even if she didn't always have the right opportunities. When she paused to rest, he finally spoke again. "You're really talented." Have you ever thought about performing somewhere bigger? She laughed softly, a light, almost musical sound that matched the notes she played. I've thought about it, but I don't know if I'm ready. And I don't know if anyone would care to hear me. He smiled. I care. She looked at him, a little surprised by the sincerity in his tone. I appreciate that. There was a pause before he said something playful, almost without thinking. If you ever play the violin on a big stage, I'll marry you. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise, and she laughed, a mix of shock and amusement. You're joking. Half joking, he admitted. Mostly just trying to give you a reason to believe you can. She shook her head, still smiling, but with a glint of curiosity in her eyes. That's a strange way to motivate someone. Maybe, but sometimes the strangest words stick the longest. She didn't respond immediately. She lowered her violin slightly and looked out over the park. Birds were flying across the sky, and the early morning sun made the fountain sparkle like a scattering of diamonds. She seemed to be thinking, weighing his words in the quiet spaces between the sounds of the park. Finally, she spoke softly. I'll remember that. He didn't press further. He didn't need to. Somehow, that simple promise, spoken half in jest, felt more important than either of them realized. It planted a seed, a tiny spark of possibility that neither of them could yet define. They spent the morning together in small, easy conversation. He asked about her music, the lessons she had taken as a child, the songs she liked to play. She asked him about his work, his life, the things he enjoyed when he had free time. They shared laughs over little stories, moments of quiet reflection, and even the occasional awkward pause that only made the connection feel more human. By midday, a gentle hunger nudged them both toward leaving the park. She packed her violin carefully, making sure the case was secure. He walked beside her, not quite sure how to continue the conversation without seeming intrusive. You play beautifully, he said again. I really mean it. She smiled, a little more openly this time. Thank you. It helps to know someone listens. He felt a warmth in his chest, the kind that comes from genuinely appreciating someone and feeling appreciated in return. I hope you keep playing, even when it's hard, even when it feels like no one is listening, because I think you have something special. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and quiet determination. I'll try, she said. I really will. They parted ways near the edge of the park, and he watched her walk away, violin case swinging gently in her hand. The sunlight caught the edges of her hair, making it glow slightly. He felt that same quiet excitement from the day before, but this time it was stronger. He knew something had shifted, not just in the way he saw her, but in the way he felt about the possibility of what might come next. Over the following days, he returned to the park regularly. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't. Each time she played, the connection grew. A bond formed not through words alone, but through shared moments, and the unspoken understanding that they were both witnessing something special. As weeks passed, they began to talk more freely. He learned about her struggles, the long hours she spent juggling work and practice, the doubts she battled daily. She learned about his quiet frustrations, the moments when he felt trapped in routine, the times he wished for something more meaningful. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fountain, he decided to say something he had been holding back. Remember what I said about the stage and marriage? She laughed lightly, the sound catching in the cool evening air. How could I forget? I wasn't completely joking, he admitted, but I also didn't mean it the way it sounded. I just wanted you to believe in yourself. I wanted you to see that you could do something amazing. She looked at him, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and something softer, something that made his heart skip. I understand. You gave me a reason to push forward. Not because of the promise, but because you believed I could. He nodded. Exactly, and I still believe it. I just didn't expect how much it would matter. A few moments of silence passed, filled only by the soft rippling of the fountain. He realized then that the bond between them had grown deeper than either of them had imagined. It wasn't about a joke or a promise anymore. It was about trust, understanding, and the quiet, steady belief in each other. They continued to meet in the park over the following weeks. Each encounter, each piece of music, each shared laugh strengthened the invisible thread connecting them. The initial spark of a chance meeting had grown into something tangible, something that neither of them could easily define but both felt deeply. Life has a way of changing paths without warning. A few months after their growing friendship in the park, she received news that forced her to move to another city. Family matters demanded her presence, and she had no choice but to leave the place where her music and her little bond with him had begun. Packing her belongings, including her violin, she felt a mixture of sadness and determination. Leaving meant leaving everything familiar behind, but it also meant starting over and keeping her dream alive. He was shocked when she told him. He had hoped that their daily meetings, small talks, and shared music would continue indefinitely. But life had other plans. He tried to hide his disappointment, wishing he could offer some solution, but he realized this was something she had to do on her own. "I'll come back as soon as I can," she said softly, trying to ease both their minds. "I'll wait," he said, even though he wasn't sure if he could. The words sounded simple, but underneath them was a mix of hope and worry. The days without her were quiet, too quiet. The park felt empty. The fountain seemed to lack its usual sparkle. He walked the paths, hoping to see her, but the spot where she used to play was just a space now. He felt the absence more than he expected, a strange emptiness that music had once filled. And every time he thought about her moving, he wondered if she had forgotten the little promise he had made, the playful words that had connected them. Meanwhile, in the new city, she faced her own set of challenges. The streets were unfamiliar, the people new, and her responsibilities heavier. Work took up long hours, leaving her tired and sometimes frustrated. But despite it all, she never let go of her violin. She would wake up early or stay up late to practice, pushing herself even when exhaustion weighed her down. Every note reminded her why she had chosen this path, why music had always been a part of her life. She found a retired music teacher willing to give her lessons at a low cost. His studio was small and smelled faintly of old wood and polish. He had a kind, patient demeanor and could see her potential, even when she doubted herself. With him, she worked on scales, compositions, and emotional expression. Each lesson, though tiring, made her feel a little more confident. Slowly, she started performing at small events, local gatherings, community centers, and charity functions. These performances weren't grand stages, but they were steps forward, each one building her courage and skill. Back in her old city, he tried to keep himself busy, but everything reminded him of her. He walked past the park, passing the fountain, thinking about the music that had once filled the air. He wondered if she was practicing, if she was improving, if she even remembered him. He sent a few messages, but they went unanswered. He didn't know if she was too busy, too tired, or simply moving on. The uncertainty gnawed at him more than he expected. Months passed. He heard rumors of local concerts in her new city but couldn't verify them. He wanted to believe she was thriving, that her music was touching hearts as it had touched his, but without proof, it felt like he was holding on to a memory rather than reality. He continued his routine, but the spark of excitement from her music seemed to have dimmed. The world felt a little quieter, the colors a bit muted. Then one evening, as he scrolled through social media, he saw a post that made him pause. It was a flyer for a charity concert in his city. The featured violinist's name was hers. His heart skipped a beat. Could it really be her? After all this time, had she returned? He couldn't wait. He bought a ticket immediately, feeling a mix of anticipation, nervousness, and hope. For days he thought about the performance, wondering how much she had grown, how much she had changed, and whether she would even recognize him. On the day of the concert, he arrived early, taking a seat near the front. The auditorium was buzzing with energy, filled with people waiting to experience music. He scanned the stage nervously, hoping for a glimpse of her. When the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, his eyes searched until he saw her. She was more poised than he remembered, her posture confident, her face focused. She carried herself with an air of quiet determination that drew the audience in even before she played a single note. He realized that the woman on stage had endured months of struggle, practice, and self-discovery. She had transformed not just as a musician but as a person. When she began to play, the music filled the hall with emotion so powerful it seemed to touch everyone present. The notes were precise yet full of life, conveying stories without words. He listened, completely captivated, realizing that the struggles, the distance, and the months of hard work had shaped her artistry into something truly remarkable. Tears came to his eyes. He had never expected her to grow so much, to transform so beautifully. She played with such depth and passion that it felt like every hardship she had faced was poured into the strings of her violin. Every note was a testament to her perseverance, to her courage, to the quiet determination that had kept her moving forward even when the world seemed heavy. As the last note lingered in the auditorium, the audience erupted into applause. He clapped along, feeling an overwhelming mix of pride and awe. He had known her potential, but seeing it realized so fully, in such a commanding way, was beyond anything he had imagined. After the concert, he waited near the backstage entrance, heart pounding. When she appeared, smiling and glowing despite exhaustion, he couldn't help but speak first. "I can't believe it. You're amazing." She laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you. I worked hard." He shook his head, still overwhelmed. "Hard isn't even the word. You've grown so much. I never expected this." Her eyes softened, and she gave a small, humble smile. "I didn't do it for anyone else. I did it for myself. But I remembered what you said, the little joke about playing on a big stage. It stuck with me. It made me push a little harder." He felt a wave of emotion he couldn't describe. Not pride, not relief, not joy, something deeper. Something that acknowledged the journey they had both been on, separately yet connected by that small promise and the music that had brought them together. They talked for a long time, sharing stories of the months apart, the challenges faced, the small victories, and the quiet defeats. He listened as she described late-night practices, odd jobs to support herself, and the moments of doubt that almost made her give up. He realized that the woman in front of him was not just a talented musician, but a resilient, determined individual who had carved her path with her own strength. And in that moment, he understood something profound. The promise, the joke he had made in the park, had never been about him. It had been about belief, about giving her the courage to continue even when no one else could see her potential. And she had taken that belief and turned it into reality, not for him but for herself. He felt a mix of pride and humility, realizing that sometimes the greatest impact one can have on another is not through grand gestures or constant guidance, but through simple faith, encouragement, and belief in their abilities. The months that followed were a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. He had returned to his old routine, the park visits, the quiet streets, the familiar paths. Yet nothing felt the same. Her absence had created a space that was both empty and full of questions. He often wondered how she was, whether she had kept her promise, whether she even thought of him at all. Then, one evening, a message reached him through a friend he hadn't spoken to in years. It was short, simple, but enough to make his heart race. "Concert coming to your city. You should be there." The note didn't say much, but it was enough to spark hope. Could it be her? After all this time, he marked the date, bought a ticket, and prepared himself. The day of the concert arrived faster than he expected, and with it came a storm of emotions. Excitement, nervousness, and a little fear. What if she had changed? What if the person on stage wasn't the same one he had met months ago in the park? As he entered the hall, the atmosphere was electric. People buzzed with conversation, clinking glasses, shuffling programs in their hands. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. The moment had come. He scanned the stage, and there she was. She was poised, confident, and more beautiful than he remembered. Her violin rested lightly on her shoulder, and there was a calm determination in her eyes that commanded attention. He could hardly believe it. The woman who had played softly in the park, whose music had wrapped around him like a gentle embrace, had grown into someone remarkable. She looked like she had belonged on a stage all along. Yet the innocence, the quiet passion he had first noticed, remained. The first notes she played carried through the hall, touching every corner, filling every empty space with sound that was both powerful and tender. He felt each note like it was speaking directly to him, telling the story of months spent practicing, struggling, and believing in herself even when it was hard. It was more than music. It was a confession, an emotion poured into every vibration of the string. He watched, mesmerized. Her hands moved with precision and grace, each movement a testament to years of dedication. Every bow stroke, every gentle pressure, seemed effortless. Yet he knew it was the result of countless hours of unseen work. He had never expected her to reach this level, to grow in such a way that the music not only reflected talent but also resilience and character. The audience was captivated, their applause erupting after every piece. Yet he noticed that she never let the attention distract her. Her focus remained on the music, her body swaying slightly in rhythm, her eyes reflecting the depth of feeling she poured into every note. As the final note lingered in the auditorium, echoing softly, he realized he was holding his breath, not wanting to miss a single moment. When the last chord faded, the applause was thunderous, but he remained seated for a moment, letting the sound wash over him, letting the reality sink in. She had not only achieved her dream but exceeded every expectation he could have imagined. After the concert, he waited near the backstage entrance, heart pounding. When she appeared, still glowing with the energy of the performance, he could hardly speak at first. His emotions had built up over months of longing, hope, and uncertainty, and now they spilled over. You were incredible," he managed to say, his voice thick with admiration. She smiled, tired yet radiant. "Thank you. It's been a long journey, but I made it." Her eyes softened as she met his gaze, a recognition passing between them that needed no words. She had remembered. She had worked hard, and now she was here, standing in front of him with her music as proof of her perseverance. He struggled to find the right words, but none seemed adequate. I never expected this," he said, shaking his head. "You've grown so much. You're amazing." Her smile grew, a mix of humility and quiet pride. "I didn't do it for anyone else. I did it for me. But I remembered your words, that little joke you made about the stage. It motivated me more than I realized." He laughed softly, a mixture of relief and awe. "I didn't know it would mean that much. I was just trying to encourage you. And it worked," she said simply. The sincerity in her tone made his chest tighten. She had taken something so small, something playful, and turned it into a driving force that shaped months of her life. Her success wasn't just talent. It was determination, resilience, and belief in herself. They walked outside after the concert, the night air cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of streetlights and flowers from nearby parks. He asked about her experiences over the past months. The struggles, the victories, the long nights and early mornings filled with practice. She spoke freely, recounting late-night rehearsals, small performances, and moments of doubt when she almost gave up. He listened intently, realizing how much courage it had taken for her to keep going alone, far from everything she knew. He felt admiration, respect, and a deeper connection than ever before. At one point, she stopped and looked at him, a gentle light in her eyes. I didn't just remember the joke. I remembered how you believed in me when no one else did. That made a difference." He nodded, feeling the weight of the words. It wasn't just about music or performance. It was about faith, encouragement, and the subtle ways people can impact each other's lives. He realized that his small gesture, his belief in her, had been enough to help her find strength she didn't know she had. They spent hours talking, the city around them quieting as the night deepened. They shared laughter, reflections, and the simple joy of reconnecting after months of distance. It was as if no time had passed, yet everything had changed. She had grown, he had changed, and the bond between them had strengthened through absence, challenge, and achievement. By the time they parted ways that night, he knew that the shock of seeing her perform wasn't just about her talent. It was about witnessing her journey, the way she had faced obstacles, worked tirelessly, and transformed herself into someone even stronger than he had imagined. The music, the stage, the applause, they were all symbols of something deeper, something unspoken but profoundly real. As he walked home, he reflected on the past months. The moments of doubt, the uncertainty, the quiet hope that had kept him believing she would come back stronger. He realized that the bond they shared had been tested by distance and circumstance, yet it had endured and grown. And he understood that life had a way of surprising people, of taking small, playful words and turning them into forces that could shape the course of a life. The night felt alive, filled with possibilities. He knew that whatever came next, they had each learned lessons that went beyond music. They had learned about belief, resilience, and the power of encouragement. And in that moment, as the city lights twinkled around him, he felt a quiet certainty that the story between them was far from over. There were still chapters to be written, still moments to share, and still music to play together in ways that neither of them could yet imagine. The days after the concert were quiet but full of reflection. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the music, and the way she had grown into someone so determined and inspiring. It wasn't just the performance that stayed with him, but the story behind it. The months of struggle, the small victories, the courage to continue when no one was watching. He felt an admiration for her that went beyond words, a mix of pride, respect, and deep affection. They continued to meet occasionally after that night, though now it wasn't in the park. Cafes, quiet streets, and small music shops became their places of conversation and shared moments. Each meeting revealed more about the person she had become, the resilience, the kindness, the quiet strength that had carried her through challenges. And he shared parts of himself too, the doubts, the small victories, and the everyday struggles he faced. They learned more about each other, not just as friends but as people who had shared an unusual connection from the very beginning. One afternoon, they found themselves walking along a quiet street lined with trees, the sunlight creating patterns on the ground through the leaves. She carried her violin case, still polished from the concert, though the scratches and marks from years of use remained. It reminded him that despite all the polish and improvement, the essence of who she was had never changed. "You know," she began, "I never played on that stage for you." "Not really." He stopped and looked at her, surprised. "I thought maybe you did, in a way." She shook her head gently. "I played for myself. I wanted to prove I could do it. But your words, the promise, the belief you had in me, it stayed with me. It reminded me that someone saw potential in me when I doubted myself." He smiled, feeling a mix of relief and humility. "I didn't expect that. I just wanted to encourage you." "And you did," she said softly. "More than you know." They walked in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable quiet that only comes after trust has been built. He realized then that the journey they had shared, from the park to separation to this moment, was about more than music. It was about connection, belief, and the subtle ways people influence each other's lives. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. They shared meals, attended small performances, and spent time simply talking. Each day he saw more of her strength and resilience. Each day, she noticed his patience, his thoughtfulness, and the quiet support he provided without pressure or expectation. Their connection was no longer defined by a playful promise or a casual joke. It was defined by understanding, respect, and a growing sense of mutual care. One evening, as they walked near a fountain that reminded him of their first meetings, he realized that the woman standing beside him was not the same one he had met months ago. She had changed in ways that were visible and invisible, more confident, more self-assured, more alive. And yet, she was still the same person whose music had first captured his attention, whose kindness and sincerity had made him want to be a better person. He felt a quiet courage rise within him, one that had nothing to do with words spoken in jest or promises made lightly. He took her hand gently, feeling the warmth and the life in her fingers, and looked into her eyes. "You've grown so much. I see you now truly, and I want to be part of your life, not just as someone who watched you grow, but as someone who walks beside you." She looked at him, a mix of surprise and understanding passing across her face. There was no pressure in her expression, no expectation. Just the quiet recognition that he had been there, that he had believed in her, and that now he was offering something real and sincere. She began, but paused, taking a breath. "I don't need promises. Not anymore. I achieved what I wanted for myself. But I want you in my life too, because you've always believed in me, and that means more than anything." He nodded, understanding fully. This was not about fulfilling a promise he had made lightly. It was about joining her in a life that had been shaped by courage, perseverance, and shared trust. "Then let's do it," he said softly. "Not because of jokes or promises, but because we want to." From that moment, their relationship took on a new dimension. They became partners not defined by obligation, but by choice. They supported each other's dreams, shared in each other's triumphs and challenges, and found joy in the simple moments. The quiet conversations, the music played together, the laughter over small adventures. She continued performing, her music evolving and touching more lives than ever. He continued his own journey, inspired by her resilience and the way she carried herself through life. And together, they discovered that love, trust, and understanding were the truest forms of connection, far stronger than any promise or playful remark could ever be. Years later, when they looked back on the journey that had started with a chance meeting in a park, they both realized how much those early moments had shaped their lives. The music, the playful promise, the separation, and the eventual reunion had all contributed to a story that was uniquely theirs. It was a story of growth, perseverance, belief, and love. Not just the love between them, but the love of life, dreams, and possibilities. And so, their journey continued, filled with music, laughter, challenges, and triumphs. The park where it all began remained a special place in their hearts, a reminder that life often starts in the simplest of moments, with the smallest gestures, and that sometimes, the most unexpected paths lead to the most extraordinary destinations. The promise had been made, but in the end, it was not the promise that mattered. It was the journey, the growth, the courage, and the genuine connection that made everything real. And together, they moved forward, ready to face whatever the world had in store, knowing that they had each other, and that sometimes, believing in someone was the most powerful gift of all.